is a very difficult concept to grapple with. Because there seems to be for me, two different impulses that are in tension with one another, both of them laudable. The one is a kind of impulse that wants to protect individuals from oversight, from being dictated to, from being told what they have to think or how they have to operate within the university environment. The other impulse is to look at the university, institution that is actually mostly funded by the taxpayers, in its social context and what its role is in the broader society and so forth. And there seems to be a tension there, so for that reason, maybe I'm not going to make a lot of sense, but let's see. My first point that I would like to make really is to ask the question, why have academic freedom declaration at all? I do not understand why in the post-apartheid era there is actually a need for academic freedom declaration in any university. And the reason for that is that section 16(1)(d) of the Constitution explicitly guarantees for everyone, including every academic, the right to academic freedom and to scientific pursuit and research. So the Constitution is the highest law in the country. It trumps everything else, although some politicians sometimes don't like that. And so the Constitution surely is already there. It already guarantees academic freedom. So why would the university now want to adopt a document that is just going to repeat in far more words what the Constitution already says? So, I mean, I'm putting it out there. I'm not sure that there is a need for such a document. It seems to me a throwback to a specific time and place, the apartheid era, as it was said before, when there wasn't a supreme constitution that could be invoked and that could protect people. So that is the first question. And having said that, maybe I should say something about how I understand how the Constitution actually protects academic freedom. And it's interesting that the constitutional provisions it's part of the provisions on freedom of expression. And like all the other provisions in the Bill of Rights, our courts have said that you can only understand it really with reference to the past. You have to understand that this document, the Bill of Rights, is trying to prevent a recurrence of all the evil things that was done under apartheid. So if you want to understand what academic freedom is, you go back and you think, so how did, I can say that because I studied there, how did Stellenbosch University operate in the apartheid era? You know, it was basically an extension of the National Party. So you want to prevent that from happening. But the Constitutional Court has also said that if you want to understand the provisions of the Bill of Rights, you have to understand that the Bill of Rights is a transformative document. That it is not a document that frees us in a completely universalistic manner the status quo. It is actually a document that recognizes that we're coming from a certain place. We have a certain history that produced a certain reality in which certain people were bestowed for various reasons with more power than others to speak, to do research, to be heard than others were. And that we want to change that, and that the Constitution is facilitating that process of transformation. So it's not as easy as saying that, well, we all should just be allowed to say exactly what we want and do research exactly on what we want, because we are not coming from an equal playing field. We are not coming from a situation, it seems to me, and that's what the Constitutional Court would say, we're not coming from a position where every single South African or even every single academic has been given exactly the same amount of power and abilities and not really abilities, same opportunities to actually do the kind of research that they want. And there's now going to be a wonderful explosion of ideas. We're all going to come with our own ideas. We're going to compete, and then the truth will come out. But it doesn't seem, I think that is not actually how reality works. This idea that there's a marketplace of ideas, people contest, and then the truth comes out, doesn't take cognizance of the fact that power plays a huge role in the formulation of ideas and in the formulation of knowledge. Power is deeply implicated in the way in which knowledge is produced. And who has power and who doesn't have power in South Africa is a very deeply problematic thing, because it's deeply implicated with issues of race, gender, class, and so forth. So to just claim absolutist and universalistic idea of academic freedom seems to me quite problematic, because it can very easily, as was stated in the introduction, can very easily lead to the protection of the status quo and the interests of those people who have always benefited from the status quo in the past. So that's why I find it actually quite difficult to grapple with the idea of academic freedom, because it can so easily be misused for freezing the status quo because of that misunderstanding about how power actually is implicated in the production of knowledge. So it seems to me that's the first point. Then if that is correct, then I'm wondering whether that second point in the declaration as it stands can be true. Namely, that it can ever be true that academics and students should therefore be free from managerialism aimed at turning the university into an instrument of power. The university is already an instrument of power. It has always been an instrument of power. It produces a certain kind of knowledge, a certain kind of reality. And so it seems to me it is nonsensical to actually say we don't want that. It's like saying we don't want to breathe the air that we have around us. It is there. We have to deal with it. The question is, and the thing that I don't think I have an answer for is, how do we deal with it? That is the issue. We cannot escape the power, because the only people who believe they are escaping the power are the people who actually have the power. And that is the problem. So making that claim and claiming academic freedom in that way, you are just making the power that you exercise invisible, which is really deeply problematic. So, having said that, so that's the one side. So I told you in the beginning I was going to contradict myself. Having said that, there's another impulse that is somehow deeply embedded in me, that maybe comes from having grown up as an Afrikaner, and where we were told, you had to always just do the right, you had to behave in a certain way. There's a song by Afrikaans pop star called Johannes Kerkorrel, and he sang the song, you have to stand in your row, you have to cut your hair short, you must always be neat, and after 50 years you'll get a gold watch. Translated. And it was that kind of thing of the authority. People tell you what to do, what to think, what not to think. And it seems there's for me a danger having any institution of higher learning that is going to produce knowledge, different types of knowledge, interesting knowledge, challenging knowledge, if that institution is going to turn into an organization that is going to stifle creativity and stifle that, ability and that possibility to be different. So it's almost in every instant, when one thinks about academic freedom, one has to, as some philosophers would say, play with both hands. On the one hand, you have to understand that academic freedom is not an innocent concept. On the other hand, you have to try and hold on to the idea of the possibility of dissidence, of difference, of making life difficult for others, for yourself, for the world. And because that's how knowledge is created, I think. That is how we actually that is how, it seems to me at least, often where interesting things happen. So, having said both of those things, where do I stand? I don't really know. It seems to me that there is a possibility for doing both these things. Maybe not, but maybe there is. In the sense of affirming an institution's role in society, affirming that that institution has power, being critical about what that power can and cannot do, and does and doesn't do, and to think critically about what you think the broad vision of that university and purpose of that university should be. I would personally, maybe because of my own ethical and ideological commitments, would say that it is profoundly to be engaged with issues of achievement of social justice. And it can be, social justice can be very broad. It can be about climate change. It can be about making the world a better place by discovering a new proton. But I think, can you do that? So, I mean, it's very important for an institution, it seems to me, to have that, to put its cards on the table. In the legal field, and that's where I come from, I think we often criticize judges for all the ways in which judgments, the hidden assumptions are never spelled out in a judgment of the judge. And those of us on a little bit more on the progressive side, we always say, well, it would be so much more honest if, and far more conducive for exchange and academic exchange and for the integrity of the legal process, if the judges actually placed, or tried at least to place their basic assumptions on the table. And I think that is what an institution like a university must do. It must nail its colors to the mast and say, we are a university, we think that in this context, in this economic and social space in which we live, post-apartheid, with this inequality, this is what our role should be. But we do not think that just because we believe that passionately, and we're going to try and promote that, that we are going to stop an individual person in the university from actually pursuing really strange ideas that maybe doesn't necessarily perfectly falls within what the university's mission and vision says. And any document, if you're going to have a document, seems to me needs to do those two things at the same time. But then there's a last thing that I just want to say, then my time is probably up, and that